Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 137. An imminent departure from the tower. When the four dragon kings flew over that skeleton, they sang in unison once again, conducting a simple funeral for the water dragon king. The closer they got to the 9th level, the smaller each level grew, and not long after, the passageway to the 8th level was close at hand. Li Jinglong informed the dragon kings of what had happened to them on the 8th floor, but Xianming replied, "There is no need to worry. We will do our best to control it. Its name is Feng Kui." Li Jinglong's memory was even a little clearer than Hung Jun's, because after all, the Yao subduing records had passed from Li Jinglong's hands to Hung Jun's, then back to Li Jinglong. Later, it was returned to Hung Jun via Qing Xiang, and finally, Hung Jun brought it back and handed it over to Li Jinglong. After Li Jinglong got it back, he naturally read through it carefully, and he was able to generally link up the identities of the ancient dragon kings with the wardens of the dragon subduing tower. Under Ye Ming's reign, there were Ying Huo, Feng Kui, Fei Lian, Xianming, Shu Hai, Lian Wen, Bingzu, and Li Mu as the 8 great dragon kings. They each controlled one of the 8 positions: Qian, Kun, Gan, Zi, Zhen, Sun, Li, and Dui. As of now, there were 7 of the 8 dragon kings left, and there was one more dragon king that controlled the deep abyss who could have long since passed away. But no matter how he calculated, there were still a lot of points in question. Since they seemed to be rooted in a long history, however, he had no choice but to let them go for now. "Prepare yourselves," Xianming said. "We are entering the 8th level." And with that, everyone held their breath. A bright light flashed in their eyes as the group of dragon kings charged up to the 8th level. This level had already fallen into complete chaos, and lightning strikes crisscrossed through the air. The white flashes of lightning were so bright that Hung Jun was almost unable to keep his eyes open, and when the dragon king Feng Kui discovered the intruders, it came roaring towards them. The 4 dragon kings placed the exorcists down on the land below, before they all rose into the air in unison, rushing forward to hold down Feng Kui's body in their jaws. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled all around them as they dragged it down to the earth below. "Right now!" Qiu Yangxi shouted. Li Jinglong and Qiu Yangxi swiftly darted forward. With a wave of his brush, Qiu Yangxi turned all the shards of rock that flew into the air from the strikes of lightning into dots of ink, and as the huge mass of Feng Kui plummeted towards where the 2 of them were standing, Li Jinglong reached back and sheathed the sword of wisdom. He spread open his hand, and the longbow formed with the power of the heart lamp appeared, a glowing arrow knocking itself on the string. With 2 wings, 2 arrows streaked out one after the other, leaving behind a trail of white sparks, striking the demonic parasites on Feng Kui's antlers. As the heart lamp's light burned, the dragon king writhed and roiled, slamming its body against the ground. The lightning that filled the sky suddenly vanished, and the world fell terrifyingly silent. 3 green jiao flew forward, but retreated immediately again in the face of the might of the dragon kings. They could only watch on from afar. Feng Kui kept shrinking, before taking the form of a middle-aged man slumped over on the ground. "Everything is over," Fei Lian said. "Come, wake from your long nightmare." A gentle breeze wafted on by, and Feng Kui slowly opened his eyes. He was evidently still dazed, and he asked, "What happened?" The group of dragon kings helped Feng Kui to his feet. Li Jinglong originally thought that there was going to be an earth-shaking battle, so he hadn't expected that it would be resolved so quickly. Evidently, compared to mortals fighting against dragons, dragons fighting against each other was much simpler. In the end, the power of this group of dragons was just on another level. They walked along on the desolate, rocky ground. Ashinakayang seemed to also have been inspired by what had just transpired, and he said, "Heh, this group of Jiao and dragons, if there comes a day where they escape, it'll truly be terrible." Qiu Yangxi replied, "That's why guarding the dragon subduing tower has been an important task that past generations of my family have carried out." Li Jinglong sent a meaningful glance Qiu Yangxi's way, before looking at Hung Jun. Hung Jun said, Yangtze Ge, after we get up to the 9th level, do you still have to take 200 years to repair the barrier? Chu Yangtze smiled, resigned and sorrowful. This was the first time Li Jinglong was hearing about it, but he simply nodded and didn't ask any further. On the 9th level, the entirety of the group appeared in the passageway at the base of the tower, and they all went up the stairs. As Hung Jun passed through each level of this tower within the tower, he let out an ah of surprise. Chu Yangtze smiled. This was where I lived when I was small. He picked up a dudu that he had used when he was little. He then came to the vanity, looking down at the combs and powders that his mother had used. Everything looked as if that period of time had been just yesterday. Let's look around a bit later, Chu Yangtze murmured to himself, before swiftly leading his companions up to the top of the tower. Yeming was still at the top of the tower, maintaining the barrier. Chu Yangtze slowly strode over and pulled out that glass bottle, saying, Dragon God, I have brought your ashes back. Yeming turned around, studying Chu Yangtze. The 5 great dragon kings came in front of Yeming. He seemed to be a little taken aback, and he asked, Are you all the only ones left? The rest of them have already passed away, Ying Huo said, after greeting Yeming. Xianming let out an odd sound, the faint sound of metal rubbing together came from within his throat. The group of dragon kings slowly began to use that strange language to speak to each other. Chu Yangtze seemed to be very nervous, but he stood there quietly. Li Jinglong listened for a while. He understood that there were some things that the dragons didn't want outsiders like them to hear, so he gestured for Hung Jun to come downstairs with him. They and Ashinakayan went into the tower to wait. The 3 of them went down to the room that Chu Yangtze once lived in. Li Jinglong cleaned off the bed so that Hung Jun could lie down on it, before distributing some food and water to them. What time is it now? Hung Jun was thinking about how the next time they went out, they had no idea how their companions would be. It has been 4.5 days since we entered the tower, Ashinakayan said in reply. At least 3 months have passed outside, probably closer to 4. Hung Jun thought, thank goodness it isn't as long as what I imagined. Li Jinglong held Hung Jun's hand, the 2 of them leaning quietly up against each other. Yangtze should be sending us out soon, right? Ashinakayan asked. For some reason, I keep feeling uneasy. We really underestimated our enemy this time around, and we ended up falling for Xiaoyu's tricks. It's not a pressing issue, Li Jinglong replied, absent-minded. We've let it be for so long already, there's no harm in waiting a little longer. Before we came in, what did Yangtze say to you? With that, Hung Jun informed them of what Chu Yangtze had said before entering the tower. Li Jinglong nodded, the ashes had already been delivered, and though their parting was imminent, there was at least no more danger, so the 3 of them relaxed slightly. Li Jinglong continued, I never thought that in the end, we would be parting from Chu Yangtze in such a way. Hung Jun evidently found this a little hard to bear, and he said, don't the Dragon Kings have any other faster way for Yangtze Ge to fix the barrier? When he thought about how they had met and all that they had done together, though Hung Jun and Chu Yangtze hadn't been alone together many times, they had already become accustomed to the tacit understanding between the 2 of them. Li Jinglong knew that Hung Jun couldn't bear to part from him, and he said, in the future, we can still come back in to visit him. After all, even if 10 years pass on the outside, inside the tower that will have been nothing more than a few days. Hung Jun ed but didn't say anything else. After all, this parting was one that they could not avoid. Ashinakayan said, of the myriad things in this world, joyful reunions are, in the end, temporary, only partings are eternal. Hung Jun was silent for a long time, before he suddenly said to Li Jinglong, after we leave this time, can I go back to Yejin Palace for a visit? Okay, Li Jinglong replied. They seemed to have forgotten what happened the last time they returned to Yejin Palace. Hung Jun was simply missing Chongming, and Li Jinglong didn't bear even a bit of a grudge for what his father-in-law had done last time. After all, thanks to his efforts, the devil seed had been sealed away, which meant that he definitely had the capabilities to prove to Chongming that Hung Jun was safest at his side. "Will you welcome us if we go over to your house to play?" Ashinakayang suddenly asked. "Of course," Hung Jun said, smiling. "I heard that your family is the richest amongst all of us," Ashinakayang said, incredulous. "Can you lend me some?" When Li Jinglong heard these words, he was a little taken aback. He knew that Ashinakayang and Atai lacked the money to revive their homeland, but they had never asked their friends for any. Even after coming to Chiu Yangxi's home and witnessing the splendor of the Flowing Clouds mountain villa, they hadn't asked Chiu Yangxi. Hung Jun replied, "Let me discuss that with my dad first." Ashinakayang chuckled. "After Atai revives our homeland, I'll have him appoint you as a little prince. We can say that you're our third brother." Hung Jun immediately chuckled. "That'll be very good." Li Jinglong immediately grew wary. "Why did you suddenly think of asking Hung Jun for money? Aren't you too depending on your own abilities?" But Ashinakayang didn't take that question seriously. "Xiao Kong is alright, he's one of us." Li Jinglong shot back with, "Ashinakayang, you and Hung Jun are not that familiar with each other." "Hung Jun." Ashinakayang laughed loudly at that, and after he finished, he said, "Looks like I pinned my feelings on the wrong person. If I had known before, I wouldn't have come into the tower with you just so that you could show off by playing the hero. You think that I came in with you for your sake? If it wasn't for Xiao Kong, who would have cared?" Ashinakayang's words immediately made Li Jinglong choke. "You." Hung Jun immediately said, "Thank you for coming in to save me." And saying that, he briefly tightened the fingers he had laced through Li Jinglong's. It was only then that Ashinakayang clarified, "No need to be polite. Everyone's our good brothers, I was perfectly willing to do this." Upon hearing those words, Li Jinglong was preparing to let this pass, but Ashinakayang added, "It's just that I was very happy to save you in particular." Li Jinglong. Hung Jun couldn't win against him at all with those words. He thought about it over and over, before finally asking, "How much money do you need?" "That's why," Ashinakayang said, "you owe me an emotional debt and lend me money in return, and we can consider that debt settled. Isn't that pretty good?" Li Jinglong protested, Hey, Ashinakayang, don't take this too far." Ashinakayang was simply very amused, and he studied the two of them, before suddenly saying, "Zenshi, help a brother out by finding me a companion too. Look at you two, and look at old Mo and Atai. Everyone's got a partner already, don't you find me very pitiful?" Hung Jun hadn't thought that Ashinakayang would actually give voice to such thoughts too. Li Jinglong said, "Yangxi also seems to be single. How about we match-make the two of you?" Ashinakayang's expression changed. "Please don't." Hung Jun thought that this was very amusing. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't picture Chiu Yangxi and Ashinakayang together. Li Jinglong agreed, amusedly, "After we get out, I'll go find you someone." Ashinakayang also liked youths. Li Jinglong knew that when he joined up in Dunhuang, he liked Hung Jun from the first time he laid eyes on him, and after returning to Chang'an, he would even dumbly flirt with Hung Jun from time to time. Despite Atai and Morijin both earnestly warning him, it wasn't until Li Jinglong confessed to Hung Jun under the moonlight that Ashinakayang finally gave up entirely. Li Jinglong trusted that since he and Hung Jun had been together for so long, and they also had the strong fetter of the heart lamp tying them together as if they had been destined for each other, there was no way that Hung Jun would fancy Ashinakayang. But Ashinakayang had been single for a long time, so every day that the rest of the group spent tumbling about made him feel more or less a little uncomfortable. Just as they were talking about Chiu Yangxi, the man himself came down from the top of the tower. "Everyone," Chiu Yangxi said, letting out a breath, "thank you for your hard work this time. We'll figure out a way to send you out of the tower right away. Ashinakayang stretched, before saying, "Take care, brother." Hung Jun rose to bid farewell to Qiu Yangxi, only for Li Jinglong to put a hand on his shoulder to stop him. "Let us not bid each other farewell just yet," Li Jinglong said. "What other difficulties are there? Tell us." Qiu Yangxi smiled. "There are no more." "There aren't," Li Jinglong said. "Just now, when I was listening to them talk, that's not what they said." Hung Jun was shocked by that, and Qiu Yangxi froze for a moment as well, before asking, "You can understand the language of the dragons?" Everyone fell silent in that moment. The corners of Li Jinglong's mouth quirked up, but he did not reply, studying Qiu Yangxi's expression with amusement. "You tricked me." Qiu Yangxi realized that Li Jinglong hadn't understood what the Dragon Kings were talking about at all. He was simply testing Qiu Yangxi, who, being wholly unprepared, was completely exposed. Hung Jun asked, "Is there anything that you need me to do?" Li Jinglong added impatiently, "These little tricks of yours can't beat me. Otherwise, how could I be your guys' leader? Tell us. How did you realize?" Qiu Yangxi asked. "Why would the Dragon Kings have needed to come to the 9th level?" Li Jinglong asked, rising to his feet. "More likely than not, something probably went wrong on each layer. Look at how the old dragons have looked so worried this entire way up. How could they have fooled anyone?" Qiu Yangxi had no choice but to tell them. "All right. To tell you the truth, I already had a whole argument with them up there. The current situation is that even if we scatter Yeming's ashes now, we can't hold out for much longer. When Xiaoyu was imprisoned in the abyss, he tampered with the focus of the array that holds the entire dragon-subduing tower together. Someone needs to head into the deep abyss and restore it to its original form." Qiu Yangxi led his 3 companions up to the 9th level, and he said to Yeming, "I brought them here." Li Jinglong said, "I am willing to listen to your guidance." Ashinakayang chimed in. "Is someone going to have to die? Looks like I'm the only one who can." "Everyone." "No one is going to die," Qiu Yangxi said uneasily. "At least, no one is going to right now," Yeming said, "Recasting the barrier of light and shadow in the dragon-subduing tower requires that my power be sent from the very top of the tower all the way down to the deep abyss. But as of now, the passageways in each level of the tower have been shifted, so they are in the wrong positions. The original central pillar of the dragon-subduing tower was formed of the light pillars that they had seen on their way up. Each of the light pillars stood in the center of the level, and each layer was connected. Like dragon bones, they made up the entire backbone of the tower. But during the first time Xiaoyu escaped from the tower, it had destroyed the array at the very bottom of the tower, in the deep abyss. Under its onslaught, this array had caused all of the passageways in the tower to shift. And if they wanted to rebuild the time barrier, they would have to correct the array at the bottom of the abyss, so that the passageway on each layer would connect up once again. There are 2 arrays, Yeming explained, calling up the image of 2 interlocked circles in the air with a wave of his sleeve. They are split into the inner array and the outer array. As of now, I do not know how the arrays were destroyed, but I imagine that Xiaoyu swapped the positions of the inner and outer arrays, thus causing the passageways to shift. What if the array was destroyed? Li Jinglong asked. That's impossible, Yeming said. This array is constructed with the earth vein as its focus. Even if Xiaoyu had an otherworldly amount of power, he would have no way to destroy it. Ashinakayang asked, why aren't you all going? Xianming was silent for a long time, before he replied, the saint who built the tower set down dragon melting pools around the array at its base, to prevent dragons and Jiao from destroying it. As long as any member of the dragon tribe gets close, they will be subject to corrosion. Then how did Xiaoyu get in? Li Jinglong asked doubtfully. Yeming shrugged. He didn't know. Perhaps it was because he had devil qi in him, or perhaps he used some other method, Yeming said. Either way, it entered, and when you enter the deep abyss, I imagine that you all may be able to get the answers you seek. End chapter. Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 138. An oath sworn on dragon scales. Li Jinglong fell silent for a moment. Ashinakayang said, I'll go. All you need to do is tell me how to straighten the main axis. 2 people are necessary, Qiu Yangxi said in reply. You and me then. Ashinakayang said, torn between crying and laughing. Zhenqi really guessed right. If this goes how I expect, Li Jinglong said, then Yangxi has to stay at the top of the tower, right? Qiu Yangxi smiled grimly as he nodded. Yeming filled them in. As soon as the repair process begins, I will take the form of a dead dragon, and will have no way to continue pouring in the amount of power I am currently outputting, so Yangxi must take my place in constructing the array. When that time comes, the interior of the tower will shake, and the 9th level of this high tower will be subject to the compression forces of time being twisted. Someone must stand guard by his side. How about the rest of you? Li Jinglong asked the Dragon Kings. Xianming said, we have to return to each level, bringing the Jiao horde back with us. As for those who are not willing to return, they must be sent down into the abyss. The Dragon King's intimidation was still there, and ever since the 5 great Dragon Kings had gone up to the 9th level, the Jiao horde was no longer as unruly as it had been before. Though they kept flying through the air of the 9th level, they seemed to know that they would have to answer for their crimes soon. Their days spent wandering about without a care in the world had come to an end, and the road leading outside was no longer able to be opened. The group thought silently for a moment, before Li Jinglong looked towards Hung Jun. Hung Jun's heart leapt at that. He seemed to know what Li Jinglong was going to ask. I will definitely go with you, Hung Jun said. Wherever you go, I'll go with you. Then let's go down into the abyss, Li Jinglong said. Do you dare to? Hung Jun nodded, and they smiled at each other. Suddenly, a charming thought hit him. Even if they traveled to the ends of the world, or found themselves cast into the depths of hell itself, they would keep each other company from here on out. With that then, the process of repairing the barrier of time no longer requires 200 years, Yeming said to Qiu Yangxi. But Qiu Yangxi was also unwilling. But from then on, you will also. What harm is there in that? Yeming replied. You already carry my dragon energy in you. Go, my child. In the end, it falls on you to personally make amends for the mistakes that I have made in my life. And saying this, Yeming pressed one hand down on Qiu Yangxi's shoulder. Wherever his dragon energy traveled, Yangxi's robes exploded, revealing an upper body sculpted with muscle, as well as the scale patterns that trailed along his back, shoulders, and powerful upper arms. This was the first time that the group saw the dragon scales on Qiu Yangxi's body, and they were all very shocked. Ashinakayang exclaimed, Yangxi, you. Qiu Yangxi was a little embarrassed as he replied. Before this, I never told everyone, but I was born in the dragon subduing tower. After Ashinakayang saw the way the tower within the tower was set up, he had already vaguely guessed as much. I was a breech birth, Qiu Yangxi said. It was Yeming who granted me a single dragon's breath of his, thus keeping me alive. With that then, Li Jinglong said, let's set out. The only thing I'm worried about is the passage of time outside the tower. It will not take long, Yeming said in reply. The only issue will be that after the barrier is repaired, time will be unstable for a bit. It will only expend a month's worth of time at most, however. This was a last-ditch attempt, and Li Jinglong had no choice but to go along with it. Then are we heading down now? Hung Jun. Is there anything you want to say? Hung Jun had been preoccupied this entire time, and Li Jinglong had noticed that. Hung Jun addressed his question to Yeming. Dragon God, I wish to ask, is there any way for a member of the aquatic tribe to become a dragon? Yeming thought for a bit. With that, Hung Jun had voiced the dream that the Carpiao had always had since it was small, to become a dragon. Yeming replied, how can it be easy for a Carpiao to turn into a dragon? It must cultivate for at least 10 lifetimes, and it must progress onto each successive lifetime in an unbroken series. After gathering enough merit, it must then gain the recognition of a saint or a Buddha. It will then undergo a series of tribulations, and only then will it be able to shed its mortal body and transform into a dragon. Will a Yao King's recognition do? Hung Jun thought of Yuan Kun. What do you think? Yeming asked in reply, smiling as he did so. Hung Jun had no choice but to let that be. Though Yuan Kun was powerful enough to see the threads of fate and the future, he still was no match for the sheer power that Yeming, as a dragon god, exuded. That meant that there was no way he could even exist on the same level as saints and Buddhas. Everyone waited for a moment. Upon seeing that there was nothing else to be said, Li Jinglong said decisively, since our time is limited, let's set forth then. Qiu Yangxi said remorsefully, thank you, Zenchi. Li Jinglong smiled slightly and patted Qiu Yangxi's shoulder, before saying to Ashinakayang, you will stay here and protect Yangxi. I've made some preparations on your behalf, Qiu Yangxi said. After the Dragon Kings lead the Jiao away, there may be some that are not willing to leave. You must bring some bait along with you and lure them into the abyss, so that you can cast them into the darkness. Wait, Yeming suddenly said. Everyone, salute them. With that, the 5 great Dragon Kings spread apart, bowing to Li Jinglong, Hung Jun, and Ashinakayang. Li Jinglong, however, grew awkward at that. Because of a single wish of mine, the dragon-subduing tower almost ended up destroying the entire world, Yeming said, turning around. I am very grateful that the Great Tang Exorcism Department is willing to help me rebuild the barrier. Hua Wang spoke truly, though the human race is insignificant, their strength is far beyond that of any other living being. These words coming out of the mouth of an ancient dragon god stunned Hung Jun. Though he was only half human by blood, he still felt a great swell of pride. Throughout their arduous journey, only Li Jinglong, with nothing more than the body of a mortal, had never given up. What he had experienced was more difficult than any one of them, and even when he hadn't obtained the heart lamp and had no magic in his body, his absolute faith had never wavered. No need to be polite, Li Jinglong replied mildly. Protecting the divine land, protecting Hung Jun, and protecting my friends and all living beings are all my duty. Though the exorcist department robes Li Jinglong was wearing were tattered and torn, when he stood face to face with Yeming, his bearing in that moment looked like that of a divinity's or a ruler's. That left Hung Jun with an impression that he was even more powerful than Chongming, Qingxiang, Yuan Kun, and the other Yao Kings. This is the oath of the sacred flame, Ying Huo said, holding up a dragon scale between 2 fingers. In the future, if you run into any dangers and this king is still alive, I promise that I will come to your aid as soon as I can. Ashinakayang was immensely shocked. Xianming stepped forward as well, handing Li Jinglong a second dragon scale. This is the oath of the glacial ice. No matter how much time passes, what you have done today will not be forgotten. This is the oath of the wild winds, Fei Lian said, handing over the 3rd scale. I will never forget the debt we owe you for the assistance you provided today. Li Jinglong. Li Jinglong hurried to say that he didn't deserve such praise. That dragon king named Shu Hai had already had his throat cured by Yeming, but his voice was still raspy as he spoke. This is the oath of the mountains and lakes. Feng Kui handed over the 5th scale, saying, this is the oath of thunder and lightning. With these 5 scales in your hands, no matter where you are or when, you may summon us with these scales. We will definitely hurry to you, and will never ignore the call. Li Jinglong hurried to thank them. Qiu Yangxi chuckled as he said, even I have never gotten these through all my years of life. Li Jinglong, I will definitely keep them safe. Yeming said, since the Dragon Kings have sworn you this oath, they will definitely honor it until the day they die. Even if you summon them to conquer the divine land and claim the throne for your sake, they will fulfill that to the best of their ability. Li Jinglong hurried to reply. I dare not. I did not have the fortune in this life to become the emperor of the humans, nor do I desire to become the emperor. Plus, after we leave the tower, I will be handing these scales over to my brothers. This is not something that I can hold onto myself, as this is a result of the combined efforts of all of us in the exorcism department. When Hung Jun heard those words, he began to chuckle, and Li Jinglong took his hand. The 5 great dragon kings let out a long cry in unison, before they flew out of the top of the tower, towards the Jiao horde. At the same time, they sent their dragon might forth, circling and undulating around the Jiao, flying higher and higher into the sky. Yeming sucked in a deep breath, before turning to face the vast sky and letting out a dragon roar. Right after that, the sounds of the dragon language shook the entirety of the 9th level, at times short, at times long. The sentences came one after the other. They were probably scolding this group of Jiao that were causing trouble by trying to stage a prison break. Qiu Yangxi couldn't resist looking back, but Li Jinglong reminded him, what are we supposed to do next? Qiu Yangxi woke from his daze, and he replied, wait for me. The Jiao horde converged towards the 5 great dragon kings. From how things looked, many Jiao from the levels where the dragon kings had died flew towards the dragon king that was on the next level down. The Jiao horde on the 7th level gathered around Shu Hai, while those on the 4th level flew towards Yinghuo. Yeming shook himself, before letting out a long cry. First, it was Feng Kui who began to let out a lamenting song, and Yeming responded in kind. Then, with a huge boom, Feng Kui and the several hundred Jiao with him vanished into points of light. Yeming's divine might had shown itself again, and he looked as if he had once again become that dragon god that once led all the living beings of the world. He turned towards Shu Hai, giving voice to that lament once more, and Shu Hai responded in the distance. There was another boom, and the Jiao horde that Shu Hai was leading vanished. The rest of the dragon kings vanished one by one in a similar fashion. The brush of judgment that Qiu Yangxi held in his hand flew rapidly through the air, drawing out symbols. Several of the Jiao that were still watching from the side noticed the energy flow in the region, and they all turned and started to head towards them, a bloody light appearing in their eyes. They let out angered roars, but because of Yeming's dragon might, they didn't dare to get close. Many Jiao in the horde that had originally decided to leave noticed the magic that Qiu Yangxi was casting at the top of the tower, and they left the dragon kings that they were following. There was a small bit of scattering amongst the Jiao horde as they charged towards Qiu Yangxi. The 5 dragon kings each vanished one by one, leading their Jiao hordes back with them as they were teleported back to their respective levels. Some several hundred Jiao were still left on the 9th level, however, and they all charged towards the very top of the tower within the tower. Right then, Qiu Yangxi pulled the brush back with a flick, and the symbols revolving through the air glowed with a blue light as they circled rapidly around the tip of that short brush. Take it, Qiu Yangxi said, handing it to Hung Jun. Don't let go. Leave right away. Hung Jun took that brush. When he turned his head again, Li Jinglong had already reached out and pulled him into his arms, wrapping his arms around Hung Jun's waist. Go! Qiu Yangxi shouted. He put his hands together, forming a sigil with them, which he pushed in Li Jinglong's direction. Yeming stood behind the two of them, and he pressed his hands against the center of Li Jinglong's back and gave him a push. A bright light flashed around Li Jinglong, and with a huge boom, he felt the entirety of the tower within the tower disintegrate. Hung Jun let out a loud shout as he realized that the two of them had appeared at the very bottom level of this tower within the tower. The array under their feet then, like a huge beast that gulped down pure energy, swallowed them right up. Up above on the sacrificial altar, ashes drifted away gently on the breeze. Yeming's entire body glowed with a faint light as he vanished, becoming one with those ashes. The tower within the 9th level of the tower collapsed, and bricks went flying every which way, leaving behind Ashinakayang and Qiu Yangxi standing at the highest point. That platform floated into the air as all the jiao around it took to the skies, rocketing headfirst towards the bottom of the tower. What happened? Ashinakayang asked, stunned. I used the landscape brush to open up a crack that leads out of the tower, Qiu Yangxi said, panting as he caught his breath. The rest of the jiao, who wish to break out, will naturally chase after the two of them. I just hope that nothing will go wrong. Ah! Hung Jun held Qiu Yangxi's landscape brush tightly in his hand, and lightning crackled around the tip of the brush as a tiny glowing vortex of a doorway appeared in the midst of it. Li Jinglong was holding him, and they charged out of the light pillar on the 8th level, the two of them shooting like a comet towards the passageway to the 7th level. Behind them, several hundred jiao scrambled after them in pursuit. Look! Li Jinglong glanced behind him. The jiao horde was getting closer and closer. Hung Jun shouted, they've almost caught up. Don't be afraid. Li Jinglong shouted in response. The two of them instantly shot towards the 7th level, before flying out of the light pillar. They schemed across the surface of the water, sending up a spray of water with a shua. Several hundred jiao followed behind them in relentless pursuit. The 6th level, the 5th, the 4th. Every time the two of them left another level behind, they flew further and further, and the jiao horde got closer and closer. When they arrived on the 2nd level, Li Jinglong and Hung Jun shot like a comet over that snowy mountain that had no base. Just as Hung Jun looked back, he saw that the jiao horde was no more than 3 zhang away from them. Li Jinglong shouted, hold on tight. The two of them flew in an arc over the peak of that snowy summit. That was the same place where Hung Jun and Qiu Yangxi had first landed when they entered the dragon-subduing tower. Hung Jun shouted, where's the light pillar on this level? In that instant, the power keeping them airborne vanished, and Li Jinglong and Hung Jun plummeted downwards in an arc towards the deep abyss below. No way! Li Jinglong yelled. Though he knew that Yeming wouldn't let them be in any danger, plummeting downwards just like that caused a sensation that was very hard to describe. The jiao horde came racing after them as they fell. Hung Jun lifted the landscape brush in his hand, which shone with a brilliant light. The flow of time grew very strange, and everything in the world around them seemed to still. He opened his eyes, and in the instant that they fell, he soaked in the sight of Li Jinglong. Li Jinglong was holding him by the waist, and Hung Jun couldn't resist pressing a kiss to his cheek. High up in the air, both of their hearts seemed to skip a beat. Hung Jun's entire face was bright red. In midair, there was no sky above them and no earth below them, the only thing there was the two of them, keeping each other company in life and death. Li Jinglong felt that he had a reaction down there, and he licked his lips in anticipation. Hung Jun began to laugh at that. The two of them looked up at the same time, and the view that they saw from that single glance was truly magnificent. The air above them was filled with jiao, who were spewing forth lightning, blazing flames, chilling ice, flying sand. It was as if the sky itself was blazing as they plummeted into the darkness. I never thought, Li Jinglong murmured, that in this life of mine, there would come such a moment as this. This far surpassed Hung Jun's expectations as well. The heart lamp shone forth from Li Jinglong's hand, lighting up the entirety of the deep abyss. The jiao kept getting closer and closer, before instantly, they passed through what seemed like an odd barrier. Time passed faster and faster, and the momentum of their plunge increased again and again. The two of them let out simultaneous loud shouts as they plummeted into the deepest level of the abyss. End chapter.